Okay, folks, so this right here, what we're going to cover in this tutorial is without a doubt one of my favorite techniques. I discovered it kind of on my own by experimenting from editing my own lynda.com training videos, actually. I got so much of that, and I make so many mistakes because I'm like really sloppy when I talk and stuff like that, and it gets really annoying to have to keep re-recording everything. And so then I had to get really good at editing stuff so I didn't have to re-record it because I'm lazy. And so what we're going to cover here, again, one of my favorite tricks ever for editing dialogue or voiceovers, and that is to cut on a plosive. Now, plosives are consonants formed by blocking the flow of air with the mouth, like with the letters T or P, for example. You say, like if you're going to go T or P, like when you say those words, the flow of air stops. Now, you might be asking, why in the world am I learning about this in a course on film editing? It's a very good question. Well, you see, plosives make it easier to make a seamless edit when cutting together VO or dialogue. I mean, you could really create some incredible miracles here. Now, before we get to that, we need to back up and talk about the different kinds of plosives, voiced and non-voiced. For example, when you pronounce the letter P in a word, p, 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 it's non-voiced. It's all air right there. There's no tone. There's no pitch. But a very similar letter, B, 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 it does have a pitch when the air comes out. So if I slow that down really slow, b, b, like you could find that note on a piano. Like that is a note. So we call that a voiced plosive. Now, there are three non-voiced plosives, T, K, and P, t, k, p, and three voiced plosives, D, B, and G, D, B, G. So, who cares about voiced plosives? Well, here's the deal, folks. If you cut across a non-voiced plosive, it's just air. So it creates a magical, seamless cut point. But if you cut across a voiced plosive, those pitches of the different takes will almost never line up correctly, and it won't be a seamless edit. Now, I would add other consonants to this list, even though they're not technically plosives. Non-voiced sounds like s, sh, ch, and f also make great places to edit clips together. Now, let's see this miracle in action here. I have some voiceover work, and I have this is from Natty. And she says, a fallen god. Let's listen to that.
A fallen god has come to this world.
This is an okay take, but it doesn't really sound like she has much energy.
Fallen god has come to this world.
But in this one, she has a lot of energy. I really like her performance.
Fallen god has come to this world.
That's just sounds sinister, like she's into it, you know? Fallen god has come to this world. She's feeling it.
Fallen god has come to this world.
But here's the deal. With this take, she doesn't say a fallen god. The gets lost. And almost every take that she did, I didn't catch this when we actually recorded it, but I went back through it in post. It really drove me crazy because it didn't say a fallen god. It just said fallen god.
Fallen god.
See that? There's no
Fallen god.
But in this one, there's a very clear
A fallen god.
And that's as clear as the us got.
A fallen.
But because she starts with this non-voice sound of the F, fallen god, we can go ahead and cut right there on that F. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to my preferences on the on a PC. This would be under the edit menu. I'm going to go under my preferences, and I'm going to go to audio. And this option right here, play audio while scrubbing. I turn that off while I'm doing tutorials because it gets really annoying to move my mouse around and have a bunch of noise playing. So I leave that off. But you want to make sure that this option is on when you're doing this trick because as I scrub and move in time, it makes it easier to find where that non-voice sound is. See that? So right there, that's a good spot to cut it. So I'll just select this clip and press Command K or Control K on the PC. And I'll go ahead and delete this other stuff. And let's find the non-voice sound on this side. Right there, that sounds good. Now let's combine them and watch the magic happen.
A fallen god has.
Look at that.
A fallen god.
Seamless. Isn't that amazing? I think that's amazing. There's probably like 3 people watching this tutorial that are like, "No, that's pretty good," and everybody else is like, "No, that's not that great." But I think it's amazing. It comes in handy so much for me. Here's another example of cutting on a plosive that bailed me out when I was editing the voiceover. Let's look at this take right here.
She wanted that for me too.
I really like that take. She sounds emotional and it's great. Just like that last way that she said too, it just doesn't sound very final. It sounds kind of whiny, not very definitive.
She wanted that for me too.
And that was every take. Every take she did something very similar when she was performing that. But this one take she did great and it's different.
She wanted that for me too.
And that last two was very definitive.
She wanted that for me too.
Very conclusive. It sounded like the end of a sentence. So what I'm going to do then, what I can do, because I really like this whole take, I really like this first part here, I go over that T.
Wanted that for me too.
Right there. So here's two, and we could just replace that last word with a different take.
She wanted that for me.
Right there. So again, just grab the end of this here and just trim it, bring these together. And because we cut on that plosive, we'll play this back.
She wanted that for me too.
Ah, so amazing. Another thing that I like to do, and I think I've mentioned this already, but just again, I'm going to click one of these edit points and I'm going to zoom in. Just going to drag this bar here and zoom over to this edit point, and I'm going to press Command-Shift-D on the Mac, Control-Shift-D on the PC to add that basic transition of constant power, basically a crossfade, and then I'm going to shrink that down so it's only basically like 2 frames wide. And sometimes I even need to get to the sample level, which we'll talk about in the next tutorial. But what this does is it makes sure that there's no kind of accidental hard edges there. Sometimes when you butt up 2 audio files next to each other, they can create a little pop. So just to avoid that, in case I can't hear it with my speakers, I like to put a little nice smooth transition there to smooth that out a little bit. Let's hear the whole thing.
She wanted that for me too.
So basically, cutting on these non-voiced sounds can really make VO editing and even dialogue editing actually just that much easier because it gives you so many more options. And the next tutorial we'll talk about the technique that I alluded to just a moment ago that I use in conjunction with this to get even more finely tuned edits.